Well, this is a Stoked Bloke preview episode for the Jefferys Bay event. We've got the men's and women's coming up, and two events left in the year, Jefferys Bay and Teopo. So two of the premier locations to sort of finish off that qualification for the final five. So we thought we'd have a look at it and see who's where and how we feel about it.
These are major events. You'd equate these as major events.
These are as big as events come, besides the Olympic Games and those ultimate, even the final five championships below those Olympics and the final five and those two world leading status positions or events. These are right up there. These are the type of events that all of the world's best surfers want to win, as much because of the quality of the waves and the history at those locations as anything else. There's those wildcard situations, but we know that those guys are, there's injuries taking its toll on people, and without Kelly Slater, Gabriel Medina, and John Florence, perhaps, it becomes a whole different playing field. And in that situation, we've seen Filipe Toledo grab the bull by the horns, as they say, and come into absolute contention. And at this point in time, he feels like the guy who's most likely to win the world title. And given past performances at Jefferys Bay and the way he approaches that wave, he's got a fantastic rail game, and he can base stuff on the rail and drive great lengths and has amazing speed. But then he also has that ability to interpret those sections on that wave in a way that maybe no one else does or has, and can take to the air and create back-to-back combinations in situations that don't even make sense, but will give you scores that are, very, very hard to beat.
What are your thoughts on Ethan Ewing?
Ethan Ewing is the real deal. There's elements of a raw edge to it at times that remind you of Andy Irons, and then he gets into that carving style that reminds you of Tom Curran, and all of these amazing techniques and styles seem to come together in his as long as he's on the wave face. And we haven't yet seen him be able to explore in competition consistently. He's been succeeding at places like Sunset and with those gouging walls that he's able to do those beautiful carves on, and that's Jefferys Bay, down to the wire. So you can imagine it fitting great there, but if you're against Filipe and Italo and there's that opportunity for them to go somewhere else and into the air and get off the wave face, then that's, the carves just can't match that at a point in time. And so he really needs to be able to evolve that part of his surfing, or my understanding of it, to challenge those two Brazilians, I reckon.
You think airs are going to factor into this event?
Well, we never thought they would. And we know that the less is more, or the length of ride stigma, let's call it, right? There is a distinct length of ride stigma which was created as a response, as an excuse for certain people as to why they got beaten. It's sort of created this style of surfing that you could be at Snapper Rocks or Jefferys Bay and it'd be an 8-turn, whatever you said, mile-long ride or whatever. But two on a closeout will score the same or more than what something on the entire length of the wave does. And it's a new thing. It's a new determination of what is good surfing. And they've kind of simplified it almost, and the less is more idea has come to the point where the two backhand re-entries is just the bread and butter recipe of the whole tour. And you see it a lot where it's, you don't need, we saw it at Jefferys Bay. You don't need six, at G-Land. You don't need six, you don't need that whole perfect left. You just need enough steepness to do two big backhand hooks and you'll get the score.
Gosh, I've been trying to tell that to the kids at Rocky Point when I'm shooting photos. Don't pump a quarter mile down to the end section and do an air. Just take off and hit the lip. Little did I know training for photos would help them in contests.
And that's where it's got to. It's a very simple, easy to understand kind of recipe or theory, as a competitor.
They could cut Kelly Slater's wave pool into a fourth, sell the rest of the property, make all their money back. All we need is that last end section of the right.
It is like that. I want the long ones. I want the longest wave I can get. I want the longest tube I can get. And I'm really not about short anything. in that sense, you know what I mean? And I feel like the short concept and, less is more concept denies the performance to become a dance. It stops it from having the ability to link in with that wave for the entirety of the wave's opportunity that's on offer and create some art with it, something that's just absolutely beautiful. We go, that was magic surfing, as opposed to a quick gymnastic style vault where you run up and throw the vault and you get your score. So there's those, the dance part of it, I think, is what we're going to get back at Jefferys Bay.
Does Jefferys Bay expose people who can't do that link together?
It really does. As a beach break surfer, I remember going to South Africa and getting to Durban and going bread and butter at the Bay of Plenty and dairy, and those waves were just suited my surfing down to the ground. I got to the point break, got to Jbay, and it was a complicated process trying to figure out a line. But it's not for everyone. You got to look at Mark Okalupo, and the line is still as relevant today as it ever was. It's the line that everyone else looks at as a goofy footer even today as a standard bearer, even though it was 20 or 30 years ago. And it stood the test of time because his interpretation of that was just so unique and so special. And that's, that is some of the greatest surfing we've ever seen.
Okay, I know we're talking about 2022, but since you were there, take us back. What did it feel like to see those lines Aki was drawing at Jbay? I mean, the timing was insane.
Yeah, and it's the interpretation of moment. You think about one of them grab rail bottom turns, and we saw him at Bells too, where he'd be at the bottom and he'd be down low and he'd be driving, he'd grab that rail and you go, I'd never think to do that. Look at that. And then that gaff out of the top where it's not just a whip vert, it had that wider approach line and it'd come out a little wider and just hack its rail back into the pocket and then come round straight back up into something. You'd be like, wow, how do you link the dots like that so naturally? And Curran, the greats do. They have that, don't they, The last time I was there, the only time I'd been there in the last 20, 30 years since 97, was the Gabriel Medina Italo Ferreira final. And commentating that particular event, it was just so good to be back there. It's a great town, great people. It's just surf vibe all around. And that wave is really something special. There's something almost like romantic about that wave. We've all watched it. We've all looked at it. People have dreamt of going there. As a goofy footer, less than you would looking at a left at G-Land or whatever, but still, you still had that. And then you've got Africa, and then you've got that vibe that is Africa that just separates it from everything else like Rio does, and, that atmosphere. So it's a beauty of a venue, and it's absolute world class, and it's dreamy to go there and be there. But in recent times, the backhand attack was denying the wrapping carve. And unless you can put John variety or Dane Reynolds style variety into that frontside carve, it can get repetitious. So it needs that, you need to alternate the arms back and create those different types of carves, which Felipe might be able to do better than anyone else in the field too.
Well, you hit on number 5, Ethan Ewing. Number 4 is Griffin Colapinto. He's on a tear right now. He comes from Trestles, which is our Walmart version of Jbay, but not a bad one. And it's where the finals are. So what do you think of Griffin?
Yeah, I love Griff. I'll tell a quick story. I was at Chopu commentating the event, and it was Joel Parkinson's last year, and there were parties quite consistently at the house. And I was at one of those parties after a surf, and I'm still in my board shorts, and I've been handed a beer as I'm trying to sneak past to get home without getting lured in. And there's a bunch of kids in a corner, all like local grommies. And they're in this corner and they're laughing and they're giggling, and the older guys are sitting over here, and then the even older guys are there having beers. And in the middle of the grommets was Griffin. And he was there as a kid with these other kids, much younger than he, but just getting stoked on stoking them out and being with the kids and making that connection, grassroots connection with kids that end up loving you. And so when I saw that and saw that told me the type of person he is. He's a sincere young man. You see that in his surfing. The surfing's got a sincerity and a cleanliness to it that's just amazing. It can be a little kind of hot and cold, as he's kind of, he's not anywhere near that veteran understanding of himself and performance and just able to roll it out with that, world champion type consistency at this point in time. A couple of wins has been incredible, and I love seeing him win. I reckon that comes from that bloke I saw turning them kids on. Good, clean soul, and he competes and surfs like that.
his wins are magnificent. When he wins, it's really something special. It's like he overcame something and he performed at his highest level to win. He's not walking through those wins, I noticed.
No, and I suppose the Brazilian Storm would make that be the case, wouldn't it? Because you're not getting to, and when you look at Ethan to Griffin, and then maybe we'll jump to second to Jack, all three of those kids just kind of have got that same kind of feel to me. They're good kids who are super hungry. And when they get their wins and they get those moments, they know it's not the end. They're not celebrating. I've never seen... Jack has won events, but the feeling I get from him, he knows the job's only half done. The win of an event's whatever. You know what I mean? People have won 50 of them. It's like, I've got to win a world title. I need to focus and really get to the end of this. And he was always saying in those presentation speeches, I'm ready. We're ready. And he goes, yeah, we know that. You just won an event. He goes, but he's ready because his mind's at the next one. He's not celebrating and spraying the champagne and just jumping around like crazy. He's inside. He might be outside, but inside he's going, okay, good, next. And all of those guys, without Ethan, but Griffin and Jack Robbo have used meditation and quiet time with themselves to understand themselves, to grow to the point that they're at now where they're able to challenge the world's best and stay true and be regular and consistent and back up every week regardless of the emotional experience of the roller coaster of competing, So I have, those three kind of, second, fourth and fifth, Jack, Griff and Ethan are really, I feel like they are the future, and they're, to be there and challenging the Brazilian Storm that's a powerful thing. Takes power to be in that position. So I've got a lot of respect for all those three kids, and especially Robbo. I've known him a long time, surfed with him around here a lot of times, and he's like at the top in my mind when I look at young kids coming through, and Griff too. Those kids are at the top in terms of growing their understanding of self for success. You know what I mean? They're not worried so much about the cutback or the turn, or where's my arm in this, or what am I doing there? Obviously there's that element, but for them, those guys I think recognise the need to grow self to achieve that top level of success, and that's a good thing to watch. The Americans were the first generation really of rich pro surfers. So they came on with money and reputation and all those things while we were still fighting for money. You know what I mean? Trying to pay the bills and get to the end of a career.
The American surf industry had all the dollars.
100%. And it's always been that way. You know that from Hawaii. There's talent in Hawaii. There's talent in Australia that doesn't get commercial opportunity because it's restricted by the size of the market. And that's a reality of global surfing, But the other thing I was thinking too that I think is quite interesting with regard to the Brazilians that I connect with really deeply, is that they're doing what we did in the 80s. As an Aussie in the 80s, the sport's booming, you're dominating, there's a bunch of you guys up there winning everything, and you're trading world titles and everyone's getting event wins, and it was a magnificent time to live. You were household names in your country doing television commercials for Kentucky Fried or beer companies or whatever on mainstream television, and the Prime Minister's down there at the event and giving out the trophies, and it was booming. It had that energy. It was fizzing along like crazy, and that's what I see with the Brazilians. This generation are living that moment in time. They're the ones who are getting this magnificent opportunity to throw the sport into the limelight in their country, and then you look at the performances and you go, well, doing a pretty good job at it.
Italo Ferreira, he surfs good there, switchfoot, so he does.
And he has been under the radar. He would be dissatisfied with his performances. He didn't have the best of years last year by often Olympic standard.
So he's having an off year and he's third.
Yeah, exactly, and he's right there. And there hasn't been that little fire of enthusiasm around him and his brand and what he's going to bring to the sport. I feel like at this point in time, and it's easier for me really when I look at it and I try and evaluate, to do it in storylines. And I think along the storylines, because a lot of the time those storylines play themselves out. And Italo's in a good position. That's where you'd want to be maybe. I would not want to be first. going into trestles. I mean, there's only one place to go. You don't get too many warm-ups. You don't have the chance to, you're just sitting there waiting to get picked off.
Second or third's a great position. Huh?
Great position. And you think of the Felipe storyline and you go, so he either dominates the year, goes to the final event of the year and dominates it and completely steals the show. Or he dominates all year, goes to the final event, the pressure is massive, momentum starts going other ways, he starts losing it, and it just nosedives into a failure at that last event and you don't win. Either of those storylines are both as valuable, but I feel like the energetic one is that failure end of it, and he needs to stand up to that and understand that, hey, in the face of failure, in the face of me, losing my dream, I will keep going. I will keep being stronger. Because in 87, for me, that was my dream. And when I lost that world title, I thought that was done. I thought I wasn't good enough to win a world title. I had to live with that and learn to live with that. And I just had to, suck it up. Italo is definitely the dark horse at this point in time. Incredibly talented. If he starts to connect with his potential, and it all collides and comes together at Jbay, and he goes from second to first, and proves that he can win that event, that'll be great momentum into that final five. And then I'd be looking over my shoulder a little bit going, oh no.
I mean, the next event is Chopu.
Yeah. And yeah, I think he, in the absence of Medina and his methodical dissection of that wave in just doctor-like precision, right? He doesn't take wipeouts. He doesn't pick bad waves. Every wave he makes gets to the end of it and he's still fresh. You can go out there and just take those lickings and be beat before you even get to the final. And if Italo can take a leaf out of Gabriel's book and find that Chopu line that is energy efficient and points maximising and find consistency there too, he could be flying into that final five event.
Is Jack Robinson the most mentally improved surfer this year?
Yeah. If Jack can find some sort of embrace that Andy Irons in him, you know what I mean, that we see in him as well, that little bit of edge that's there, find some different carves out of the top and drive that thing and get some tubes and then find some airs and mix that all together, I feel like he's got the performance to beat any of them.
And then you're back to Felipe at number one. What do you think about Felipe's chances at Jbay? Pretty good.
Pretty good. Really good. I was always a little paranoid about peaking too early, about showing all the cards, about using up all. You only get so many wins a year, right? There's only, it's not like anyone's ever gone through and just won everything. And even with Kelly's dominance, you need to peak at the right time. For Felipe is an event, not off, but an event without a result. Is that a good thing at this point in time? What is a good thing? You don't know. So you just got to go out there and be completely engaged and give it everything you've got. And if you win another and you win another and you go into the final five event and you've got 4 wins or back-to-back wins into that, you can't let your own paranoia sabotage that confidence, which is one of the things I found that I had to deal with, because I would get paranoid. I have too much success and think the bad one's coming. Oh my gosh, now's not the time. So for Felipe, I think whatever happens there doesn't matter, right? For him, he's in. If he slipped down to second, maybe good. You know what I mean? So really, for Felipe, he can go there not caring. And a bad result could be as good as a good result. So it don't really matter for him. He's kind of the one guy who, and I feel a little bit like that with Italo too. Jack, I feel like he needs to keep the momentum. He needs to keep building towards something, and that's the way he is wired, Felipe, he could take a peg back and it might just kick him in the butt at a good time, and it might be a good thing, could be. Italo, he's kind of in that place already, so the desire's building towards that point in time, and a little bit of success for him would either make him hungrier at a good time, or it might make him more confident and build the momentum. So, there's certain people it doesn't feel as important as it does for others, Ethan, Griffin, keep the momentum. Jack too, make sure you're there. Make sure you don't have a 2-event muff up where you finish last in first couple of 2 events and all of a sudden you're in 6th. And Kanoa Igarashi's gone into the top 5 and you're out.
Don't stumble.
That's there's people with the not stumble pressure, isn't there? And then there's, Kanoa's in sixth place. He's an incredible surfer and such a talent. And I can see that line on those waves and the potential to find air. So, he's a tough guy to have in sixth.
Any possible winners down the line? Slater?
I mean, Kelly, obviously, because there's a desire. Geordie, of course, and you forget, don't you, how good he is and how suited he's going to be to that situation. He's at home, he's got the local energy, he's got his family and friends. That's a powerful motivator, and the knowledge of the wave, and he could win the thing. Again, Carissa Moore obviously is, it's hard to, what can we say? Obviously Olympics and world titles and incredible performance on the rail. She's an evolved soul from the one we saw years ago, and she's, the confidence has come with that and the success continues to roll. So you can't go past that. But to me, Lakey is a big chance right here. And if she could, she's in third, if she could get the momentum going into that, Jbay and get good success in Jbay, that solidifies your position, takes the pressure off for Chopo. You go to the final 5 event at Lowers, and I would almost go, she could be my favourite going into Lowers if it's on point. If she's on her rail and the rail's clean through the water and she's not too in her head and the body's fluid, she's as good as anyone. She's incredible. And it just hasn't been at its best yet, and it doesn't need to be. So, I think that I have a lot of hope for her. And then I would look at Tatiana, Bronte, and those backhand attacks as being lethal. And we saw the backhand, go to the 4 in 2019 at Jbay with Medina and Italo, and I could see, if one of those girls catches fire with their wave selection and they're just sticking it up vert a few times, that could be powerful and they could be in a position to win as well. And Joanne's amazing. Second place at the moment. My mind always thinks backhand as a natural sort of disposition when I think of her. She's done well at the surf ranch on those rights, and it's just a bigger version, Nelly. You almost just steroid up the surf ranch to Jbay. I reckon Joanne's, her comfort in those type of waves, in those type of conditions and under pressure has been the best it's been. She could win, even though we don't, recognise the forehand to be as powerful as the backhand. It definitely can be. Stephanie
is such a good surfer. You feel like she could win at any time, but is her competitive mind, have you seen this year? Does she seem like she really is gung-ho for that title? Would that be number 8?
Yeah, that'd be number 8, wouldn't it? Equal with Lane Beachley now on 7, and take her to the greatest woman of all time. I would imagine that most people are pretty comfortable with that idea. And you go, yeah, sweet, she deserves that. That would be fantastic.
Could she win Jbay?
And she could definitely win Jbay. There's no doubt about it. Again, looking at the Surf Ranch right or the Superbank, you just steroid them up a little bit, and they are similar to Jbay, have similar opportunities, just more canvas. And she looks fantastic on a big canvas. I think sometimes I feel like she can't push her rail as hard as I'd like to see her push that rail. I don't know why that is. I just feel like there's a fluidity and a smoothness to her as a character and to her approach on a wave that may probably prevents that extra bit of raw, aggressive in a moment that's really going to, crikeys, and make the hair stand up. The hair stands up more from the style and the technique and the beauty of what she does. And on Jbay, for her to win, I think there needs to be a bit of that raw, grunty edge. And if that can be found by riding a bit bigger board, perhaps, that just drives that rail and gives you that space and opens things up where she can get into that beautiful style and drive them, and we get the time to appreciate them, I think that's, that could be the key for her. I always think about the bottom turn of Julian Wilson and how it was notoriously known as one of the best bottom turns, and Jbay was one of the places that's looked its best. But what he simply did was hold the rail longer, held his body position longer. He didn't do anything else. He was just in it longer. And when you're in it longer, we get the opportunity to appreciate it. If you're in it and out of it straight away, it's like, you don't even see it.
Well, if you're coaching, you would tell someone it also gives you time to set it up, to see it. You're turning better because you're coming off the rail curve of your actual surfboard, which fits the wave better. I mean, there's a lot of advantages to holding that bottom turn.
Absolutely. And for me, that opportunity, whether it's on the toe side or the heel side in the carve or vice versa, we talked about Ocky's backhand one. That's what we need to see from the goofies, is some of that full drive, carving, rail aggression that's kind of a little different to just the tight to the pocket, off the bottom, off the top routine, So there's lots of opportunities on the backhand for variety. On the forehand, we already see it, but it's not often used as much as it could be, besides by John. He uses the variety in the forehand perfectly. And there's always something new, and half the time you go back to see it again to see what he did. And if Steph and any of the natural footers in that women's field can find that variety and add some of those turns in, that creates a point of difference, that could be a real valuable thing too. In association with the Pipeline Podcast and the Stoked Bloke Show, great to be thinking about surfing in the field. Hope you guys enjoyed it.